My name is Reverend Father Dr. Henry Avemaria. My course is Mariology. I'm taking you on Introduction to Mariology this evening. So I want to talk on Mariology. Simply put, is the theological study of Mary, the mother of Jesus. Mariology is centered on Mary. We cannot talk about Jesus without about Mary. The woman, Mother Mary, influenced me in emotional and spiritual development. That has made me to be part of this program. So when we are talking about Mariology, we are studying Mary's life and the various dogmas associated with her mission, which has so deepened our faith and increased our knowledge on Mary's role in salvation history. Dear friends in Christ, there are 4 Marian dogmas or teachings formally revealed by God regarding Mary. 1, ever virgin. 2, mother of God. 3, immaculate conception. And 4, assumption of Mary. These are some Catholic theologians also propose a 5th dogma, which we call Mary as co-redemptrix. Over the past 50 years, some theologians and bishops have proposed a 5th Marian dogma, that of Mary as co-redemptrix. They claim this dogma, which is so supported by scripture and tradition. In summary, what is Mariology, as I said, refers to the systematic study of the Blessed Virgin Mary within Catholic theology. Although Marian devotion has been part of Catholic life since apostolic times, systematic Mariology only began in the late 16th century within this Jesuit Francisco Suarez. This was a priest, a Jesuit, who came up with this Mariology in 1548 to 1617. We call this Jesuit Francisco Suarez as the founder of systematic or scholastic Mariology. This can be conferred in Carol 2000, page 334, over 1948 in page 167 to 68. So this actual term Mariology first appeared in 1602 with the publication of Summa Sacra Mariologia, Pars Prima. This publication was first brought out by Placido Negido, and that was 1570 to 1650 in centuries. So from the 17th century to the present, Mariology has been so considered a distinct discipline within Catholic dogmatic theology. Why is Mariology important for Catholic education? Why do we need to know Mariology in our society, in our college, in our ministry? Why do we need to know Mariology? John Paul II, in 1988, in his apostolic letter, Mulieris Dignitatem, he said that Blessed Virgin Mary is at the center of salvation history. That we cannot talk about life, human salvation, without making mention of Mary. That Mary is in the center in our salvation history. And how did Pope John Paul present it? He says, when the time had fully come, God sent forth his son, born of woman. With these words of his letter to the Galatians, chapter 4, verse 4, the Apostle Paul links together the principal moments which essentially determine the fulfillment of the mystery, predetermined in God. We can confirm this in Ephesians chapter 1, verse 9. So what Pope John Paul II was telling us that we cannot begin to talk about the human history, human salvation, without making mention of this Mariology, without making mention of the Mary. So Apostle Paul links this to us. So also, we can also confirm it in Ephesians chapter 1, verse 9. And what does he say? He said, the Son, the Word, one in substance with the Father, becomes man, born of a woman, at the fullness of time. I want to take you back to John chapter 1, verse 1. How do we get to know how Mary is important? In the beginning was the Word. The Word was with God, and the Word was God. That is true. But John chapter 1, verse 14 now also made us to know that the Word took human flesh from Mary. The human person he took his flesh from is Mary. So John Paul II made us to know that we cannot talk about the world without making reference to our Blessed Virgin Mary. And that is why he says, Blessed Virgin Mary is at the center of salvation history. That is the aim of Mariology as a theology. Now, we are talking about this event that leads to the turning point of man's history on earth. I was saved because Mary said yes to God, that she will be part of salvation history. You are saved because Mary said yes to God, that she will be part of saving mankind through Jesus Christ. And that is why the church considers Mariology so important. And we are now talking about the key event in the history of salvation. The Lord's Paschal mystery has proven it all. A woman is to be found at the center of this salvific event. That is what John Paul II also referred in 1988, number 3 in his letter. According to St. John Paul II, he says we should bear this in mind, that Mary is part of our salvation history. We must make reference to Mary. There is no way we can talk about Jesus without talking about Mary. And that is why, after the Second Vatican Council, there were a lot of concerns raised whether Mariology was being given adequate treatment in Catholic institutions of higher education and seminaries. And Benedict XVI in 2005, in his homily for the 40th anniversary of the closing of Vatican II, he also made reference to Mary, that we should make reference to Mariology in our theology. So, Mariology has been considered as the theological study of Mary, the mother of Jesus. And as we know, Mariology seeks to relate doctrine or dogma about many to other doctrines of the faith. So now, it is important for us to also understand that theology is centered on this final speaking of God in Jesus Christ. He speaks in the person of Jesus, in the human life and work of Jesus. We encounter the Father who sent him, and God who sent him. Through whom did God send Jesus into the world? It was through Mary. So this presence before God, this openness to his word, this response to his invitation and freedom, this also gives us a total involvement with body, mind, and heart in God's work of salvation. So I want to now let us understand that there are elements in Mariology where we talk about ecclesial dimension of Mariology. We should also know why Mary is also important for Catholic education. We should also know that there are problems of Mariology. We should also know that there is a significance of Mariology and ecclesiology. So now I take it one after the other. Why is Mary important for Catholic education? It's important because God chose Mary to bring forth Jesus, to bring salvation to mankind. That is why it is very important, because Jesus took human flesh, and the flesh he took was that of Mary. That is why it is important for our Catholic education. Now, we should also talk about ecclesial dimension of Mariology. The core of Mariology is obviously the person of Mary, the woman of Nazareth, who, according to the gospel, gave birth to Jesus. God's entry into our world. God came into our world through human person, which is the person of Mary. And he described it in the gospel according to Luke, not as an act of divine omnipotence, but as a personal encounter. The divine invitation addressed to Mary and the free response to the handmaid of the Lord. Remember what Luke gospel tells us. It says, when God called Mary, said, "You will be the mother of God," Mary responded, "Let it be according to your word." That was the response Mary gave to God. Mary did not say no to God. Rather, Mary said yes. That is why we consider Mary as part of human salvific history. So, in the Gospel of Luke, the Gospel of Luke said it all. And now, the divine invitation addressed to Mary and the free response to the handmaid of the Lord. In faith and surrender, she is the first to respond to the message of salvation. She is the first. Just as the conception of Jesus in Mary's womb is the Son's first step in an ever-deepening and widening communion with our human family. Likewise, Mary's faith, her response to God's word, and her involvement in the divine work of salvation, which is the first voice of an ever-growing chorus of responses coming from all believers. In other words, Mary gave birth to Jesus' earthly body. The church is to give birth to the body of his faithful. Mary, the virginal mother, becomes the model of all the church. So the church has to recognize her. The church has to reverence Mary. The church has to have a place for her in our world, in the church. Mariology is the attempt at a comprehensive understanding of Mary's place in God's plan of salvation. If God could consider Mary in his own plan, then we, the church, we, the members of the church, should also consider Mary, have a place for her in our church and in our life. And that is why we are talking about the ecclesial dimension of Mariology, because it is Mary and the church. Now, what is the problems of Mariology? Exaggerations of popular devotions, which assign her a disproportionate role in Christian life and create for her, as it were, an isolated, glorious world of her own. Now, there are two schools of thought that is talking about problems of Mariology. We have the maximalist school of thought, and we have the minimalist school of thought. And what does the maximalist school of thought say about Mary? Maximalist school of thought focused on the intimate connection between Christ and his mother in the only Catholic act of redemption. These are the group like you who believe much in Mary. like we believe much in Mary, we already know that Jesus took his flesh from Mary. So we are promoting our Blessed Virgin Mary. And that is why we belong to the maximalist school of thought. But there is also another school of thought that does not want to associate much about the union between Jesus and Mary. Their approach avoids discussion of Mary's union with her divine son. Rather, they focus on Mary as a member of the church. It cannot be. Mary is not just a member of the church. Mary has a strong union with Jesus, the Son of God. So the minimalist approach, they don't believe in Mary. We can give an example. The minimalist approach we can say the Protestants, for instance. We can classify them as minimalists, even though we don't like to use them as minimalists. We can also classify the Pentecostals as the minimalists. But we call Catholic are the maximalists, that we must talk about. We cannot do anything without making reference to Mary. Like you started your program, your study with a fellowship with Mary. You started saying the rosary. It shows that you are a maximalist. You belong to the maximalist school of thought. And I thank God for that. So these are the problems. There is always a problem, and the problem will continue to exist. If you look at this, the pictures, you will see our Blessed Virgin Mary. You see the right part of it. You see how the maximalists accept her role in the church. How the maximalists accept her union with Christ. And if you look at the other picture, you will find out that see how they say a favored one could have been anyone else. The minimalist approach says it could have been anyone else. The minimalist approach says he's a sinner. The minimalist approach says just a vessel or two. And the minimalist says she is there. She can't pray for you. Then why must you pray through Mary? The minimalist will say she is a low estate. Minimalist will say just a nice lady. They gave all kinds of names, only important during December. That is when they always talk about her. But you, the maximalist, you believe in the gospel of Luke 1:28. The Lord is with her. Luke 1:14 verse 42. You appreciate that she said, blessed among women. And who said it? Elizabeth saw her and said, you are blessed among women. Matthew chapter 7 verse 15 says, you will know her by her fruit. Another maximalist says, she is mother of God, which confers in Luke chapter 1 verse 43. Apocalypse, that is Revelation chapter 12 verse 1 to 2. It says to us, she is in heaven interceding for us. The same Apocalypse, Revelation chapter 12 verse 17. It says she is the mother of the church. Luke chapter 1 will also, from 31 down, we say she is a perpetual virgin. Genesis chapter 3 verse 15, the maximally will say she is the new Eve, because she has come to bring a salvation to us. And Hebrew chapter 9 verse 4, we also say she is the ark of the new covenant. So these are the approaches. So we want to thank God because Mary has always been interceding for us. We cannot do without her. And that is why in the shrine where I am working, the shrine of our Blessed Virgin Mary, we promote her in a very special way. Like today, being Saturday, parishes come down there to come and devote themselves to her. A lot of parishes come to our place on a pilgrimage to her. At times, we carry her to other churches, other parishes, so that people can devote and reverence her. We are doing this because we are maximalists. We need to propagate her because she has a role playing in our life, in our salvific history. So now, we also need to go to what does the significance of Mariology tells us.
In theology itself, theology, as we know, is a part of the life of the church. Mariology cannot stand in place of theology without making reference to Mary. It articulates the faith that is expressed in the church's teaching and worship in relation to the social and cultural conditions of the faithful. So we talk about the Mariology has to interpret the actual place held by Mary in her life of the church and the people. And what does the Catechism of the Catholic Church tells us in paragraph 971? It says, all generations will call me blessed. The church's devotion to the Blessed Virgin Mary is intrinsic to the Christian worship. The church rarely honors the Blessed Virgin Mary with a special devotion. Just like those who came, there are those who came here in the shrine on a pilgrimage. A lot of parishes came here today. The Legion of Mary, the Sacred Heart of Jesus, they came here to come and give a special devotion to our Blessed Virgin Mary. And this had already started from the most ancient times. The Blessed Virgin has been honored with the title of Mother of God. When we were preaching this afternoon, we were trying to letting them know, the people of God, that Blessed Virgin Mary is at the right hand of Jesus, just as Jesus is at the right hand of God the Father. So Mother Mary is interceding on our behalf before her Son Jesus Christ, just like Jesus is also interceding on behalf of the world to his Father. So Blessed Virgin Mary occupies a very special place in the life of the church. And this very special devotion differs essentially from the adoration which is given to the incarnate Word and equally to the Father and the Holy Spirit, and greatly fosters this adoration. I also want us to understand that the Mariology and ecclesiology, we need to go into Mariology and ecclesiology. What do we know about that? In Vatican II has inserted Mariology into the life stream of the church, and so freed it from isolation. At the same time, the presentation of Mary as the typos of the church symbolically renewed image of the church itself. Mariology is a substantial contribution to ecclesiology. What am I trying to say? When we talk about ecclesiology, we are talking about the church. The church does not solely exist without making reference to Mary. The church cannot talk about Jesus without talking about the mother. And that is why when we talking about the head, Jesus is the head. We are the body. The lay faithfuls are the body. But Jesus has a mother. Mother gave birth to Jesus in the personal encounter. In John chapter 1 verse 14, gave birth to Jesus. Jesus is the head. We are the body. In other words, Mother Mary, Blessed Virgin Mary, is the mother of God and at the same time our own mother. And that is why in the church, where we have the head, we have the body. Mother Mary is the mother of both the head and the body. So that is why the church has a very significant role to play in the life of Mary. And also, Mary has a significant role to play in the life of the church. That is why two of them cannot do without each other. So Mary stands for the entire community of believers. Yes, she is first mystery, sacrament of salvation, not primarily an institution. She is a wonderful symbol. She is a strong image in the church. So we have to understand it that a lot of people get it so confused that why would Mary be given a high place in the church? And those who think that way are those who have problem with Mary. And that is why we call those people the minimalists. The minimalist school of thought does not want us to talk about a union between Jesus and Blessed Virgin Mary. But for you and I, Mary must always be united with her son, Jesus Christ. And the union started from John chapter 1, verse 14. That is why Jesus took his flesh from Mother Mary. The church took her flesh from our Mother Mary. That is why the church is not being referred as he or him, but the church is referred as her, as a she, as a feminine, as a female. And it is the Mother Mary. So we are talking about Mother Mary, which is a symbol, a mystery, and an image. So we should also talk about how the church has so survived by the help of our Mother Mary. I want to take us back to so many years back in the decades, centuries, where the church underwent persecutions. And they survived, the church survived because Blessed Virgin Mary intervened by the help of her intercession. When people prayed the rosary, that helped the church to survive under the persecution of when there were a lot of heretics, when there were a lot of leaders that were trying to suppress the church. So Mary has been playing a wonderful role in the church. And looking at it, we are talking about the church, we are talking about Mary. Jesus says to us, we cannot do without his mother. And that is why he says to us, son, which is John. John is a representation of the church, of the world. Behold thy mother. Jesus told John. And at the same time, Jesus told John, behold thy mother. And he told the mother, behold thy son. So the world has to behold our Blessed Virgin Mary. And Blessed Virgin Mary has to take care of her children. So that is why Mariology and Ecclesiology is an important part in the course of Mariology.